So, it's Tyler again. What is armor class? Let's find out. So, you might have to turn me up a little bit because I'm going to be standing up and away from the microphone. Feel free to do so. People seem to like the HEMA videos and how they pertain to tabletop RPGs and how you can incorporate more of that stuff into your fantasy or medieval fantasy or Renaissance fantasy or whatever. If it has to do with melee combat, incorporate it into your tabletop RPGs. And I got to thinking, I mentioned, we have a buckler. This adds 1 AC in most games, or a small round shield. A small shield, it tends to add 1 AC in games that use AC. But what even is AC? It's called armor class, but we start with 10 of it in most systems, even if we're totally naked. Well, that's not armor then. And then you add your dexterity bonus, so it's also you dodging, so it's your dodging modifier too? Or dodging class? Well, like many things, it's a holdover from the old Gygaxian days, where Gygax basically took naval war games armor class and just straight ripped it and ported it 1-to-1 to Dungeons & Dragons. Which is why in the old days you had Thaco, because a lower armor class was, the smaller number was better. If you think of more like tiers, like tier 1, well, top tier, top of the line. Sometimes it's like that. So what is armor class? Well, what it was that 10 that we're starting out with, it's not our dexterity bonus, it's not us dodging around and avoiding things, it's not our armor, because we're not wearing any of it yet. So what could that be? Well, it could be, as I've already mentioned, maybe we've got our dagger, and we're using that to actively block and stuff. So we could consider that our weapon is part of our armor class that we already have, and just give people big penalties for to their armor class if they're trying to defend themselves with literally nothing. There are, however, other things that armor class can be defined as. It can also be the difficulty with which we have to damage our target. Some games, like Pathfinder, incorporate this as damage resistance. It's a separate thing, but that doesn't mean you can't think of it that way, right? I'm just wearing some historical clothes right now, a puffed and slashed tunic or jacket, and this offers me some armor class. Let's say someone throws a sort of half-hearted slash at me. This is a sharp knife, by the way, and that hurt a little bit, but it didn't cut me. Even if I press in here and drag across, I'm going to be fine, because this clothing is very thick. It's got multiple layers, and they're bunched up like this, which is one for decoration. It's one to show, look how much clothing I can afford, and I don't necessarily need it. But two, it does help with, inconsequential things. So the clothing of the period that you're role-playing does help. It offers some AC that the game doesn't tell you it adds. Likewise, your skin is somewhat hard. It's somewhat hardy. If we got a blunt weapon, maybe your edge alignment is not very good, and you end up hitting more like this, and you just sort of slap somebody with the flat, and you go, ow, that hurt. I didn't like that very much. But I haven't taken damage. You have not passed my AC because your edge alignment was crappy. Maybe it's a superficial wound and we just don't mark it as HP loss. So it didn't hit. So ways you can think about this is the guy manages to get past your defenses and strike you, but you realize after a brief moment of shock, oh, it didn't actually damage you at all. And then you keep fighting. Or they block your attack and then duck under, but they don't have enough power remaining into it. It's just an arm-powered strike. And so it just harmlessly glides off of your clothing, and you're fine. Or perhaps you can tell this fighter is used to using a dual-edged weapon, and he, after delivering one strike that fails to attack you, tries to hit you with the other end of the blade. but just ends up hitting you with the spine, the blunt spine end, and after a second of recoiling, you realize you're fine and can continue to fight this person. Something like that. So yeah, armor class is a bunch of different things. Armor class is tricky because it doesn't just mean you have absorbed the hit either. It can also mean this person has just swung an attack and completely missed you, even if you weren't trying to actively dodge it, right? Pathfinder breaks down AC into all sorts of things. We've got dodge, deflection, shield, armor, dex, what else? Natural armor. You've got a particularly thick hide, things like that. But that 10 that we're starting with can still just represent the difficulty in hitting a man-sized target, especially if we've got ranged combat. You know, you've got a bow or a firearm. You've got a bow here somewhere, but not right next to me. You could just totally miss, right? The human eye is really bad at depth perception. If I'm standing totally still, and I have not swung a sword a lot of times, if I'm a level 0 or a level 1 character, and I've got maybe, you know, I'm not trained with a sword, I've got maybe a +1 or a +0 to hit, yeah, it's going to be about a coin flip. If I realize, if you, the laptop, are my target, I know if I take a step here, I have hit the laptop. But someone, you know, this is not attached to the human body. We don't know. It's very tricky for someone to guess, you know, exactly a foot away from themselves. So maybe it's just a total miss. You know, that 10 is just the human or the meta-human or whatever, the eye's inability to perceive depth super reliably, and that base attack bonus and your, you know, all of your training that adds to your attack roll is your familiarity with the length of your weapon, the human's natural response to, even if someone's not actively trying to dodge in a, you know, in a martial arts way and, you know, taking their proper steps and footwork, if you swing something fast at somebody, they're naturally going to go, ah, and, you know, move back a little bit. So maybe you've got the distance right, but you haven't accounted for the fact that this guy's going to be leaning back. He's not taking a movement action to do that, but remember, we're in a 5-foot square. Somebody isn't, you know, standing like this, taking up the whole 5-foot square. They're, you know, even if they're not taking big, you know, concerted efforts to move into other squares, they are leaning, moving around, you know, even if they're just, you know, panic moving and not, you know, taking nice defensive actions, there's a possibility you just miss them because you misjudge the distance. Especially if you have a ranged weapon, but even with a melee weapon. So there's another part of armor class. There's another part of how you miss. What's the point of all this? Well, the point is so that you don't get into combat and a GM that doesn't know really how sword fighting works just goes, they hit you. Take 8 damage. Oh, I'm dead. They don't hit you. They manage to miss you. Oh, okay. Or you're wearing full plate and just every single time they hit you, they don't do any damage. They hit you, you don't do any damage. They hit you, they don't do any damage. You know, we can add to this, you know, where these arming points, these little tassets where I would strap up, you know, armor and the like. Maybe they go to hit me and that is armor. Maybe they roll. I have a 19 armor class because I have, you know, let's round it off. Let's give me 12 dex. So I've got 12 dex. I'm wearing full plate. That gives me a +9 to my armor class. And my dex adds 1, and then I've got the base 10. So I've got a 20. You need a 20 or more to hit me. Maybe they get a 19. It's like, oh, okay. There, my plate is fully protecting me there. Or rather, my dexterity is what's protecting me there. So maybe you see somebody, they start to try to jam their knife into the weak point up under the gorget, the metal bib that protects your neck. And you just at the last second cover up your neck so that it hits harmlessly on the hard vambrace or bracers of your arms. Something like that. You know, you can always get creative with it. They just barely miss you, and you feel your hat turn, telling you, wow, that was a really close one. You don't have to tell the player, I rolled an 18 and your AC is a 19. They just know, ooh, you must have rolled really high on that one. Ooh, okay. Let's let's finish this fight. I don't want too many more of those. What else? What else? So there's distance, there's clothing, there's the skin, the fact that we're just sort of passively moving around even if we're not very coordinated. You know, Mike Tyson said his most difficult opponents were the worst trained ones because you couldn't figure out what they were going to do. They had some really unpredictable movements. So there's something to be said for that. That 10 sort of being the unpredictable nature of how a person moves under stress. There are definitely some ways we can predict it, but not everyone's going to act the exact same. The amygdala, the center of the brain that's responsible for controlling fight or flight, well, it makes a different decision every time, or at least for every person. Some people choose fight, some people choose flight. There's a third one, which is way more common, which nobody talks about, which is freeze. Maybe you've predicted that this person is going to move away from you. So you've shot way past them and you end up hitting them with your hand. But what they've done is they've just sat there. So you end up hitting like this. You've misjudged the distance in that way. Also, not every bit of this blade is as effective. So even if you misjudge the distance, but you still manage to hit, if you hit really close to the hand, I don't have much of a lever. See, look how little I move my hand, and how much does this part move? I'll put my finger here. That moves that much. And if I put my finger at the tip, how much does that move? Wow, it moves a ton more. So the tip of this is moving a lot faster than the base of this. So I want to hit with about this point right here where I've got the nice mixture of the most mass and the most speed possible. Because here I've got a decent amount of mass, but I don't have any speed. So I could hit somebody like this. All they have to do is move from here to here. So if I think they're going to take a step back this far, and I'm aimed way out here and I hit here, I'm probably not going to do them much damage. So again, mixing up your descriptions of you hit, you do no damage, you go to swing, but they they just don't move where you were expecting them to, so you miss them. You misjudge your distance, they duck randomly out of the way. Of course, they're using the 10 dexterity. Having no dex modifier to AC doesn't mean they are completely uncoordinated. It means they're average coordination. So they are still trying to duck and get out of the way passively. What else? What else can we talk about AC? Yes, we can talk about the shield bonus to AC. Now, the shield bonus in most games is just sort of a passive thing. It's just representing you've got a shield. But in some games, I know in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they added you can start to actively block with your shield. This has advantages and disadvantages. So if you imagine I hold my buckler close to me here to block, and that's just sort of passively granting me 1 AC, if somebody tries to stab me here, it's not going to work. If somebody tries to, I'm not actually going to swing at this because I don't want to ruin this edge. But, if somebody swings here, they won't hit me. But look what happens instantly as I bring it closer. There's this cool sort of optical illusion and nice geometric effect where now, here, this doesn't protect me here or here. But if I bring it closer to you, now, you have to come all the way past the buckler to hit me. So I just have to make a very short turn. I'm keeping my arm completely straight and just pivoting my body. And I can protect a huge amount of my body by just stretching this out. I haven't actually changed the size of the buckler, but I've sort of created the illusion that I've changed the size of the buckler. So I can use it kind of actively. I can bring it in close if I want to protect my arm. Maybe I've got it out here, and my opponent just starts targeting my arm all the time. You're in a fight. Say you're in a duel with another buckler guy. He's got maybe a short dagger. Maybe you've just fought somebody. this might be a scenario of you just fought somebody on the street, the guards have, taken your weapons away. You're not just going to be walking around with a huge sword, but you draw your dagger, you draw your buckler. You've seen the guy, he wants to fight you, he's no good, he's trying to assassinate you or whatever. And so you're both in pretty similar gear, very light armor. Maybe you stretch your buckler out to just get your normal AC, or maybe the DM is giving you an extra point of AC, but the other guy is like, I'm going to target his arm and try to chop that out because he's presented that as a big target. Okay, make a called shot, arm in Pathfinder. Or if that system doesn't exist, just, okay, I'm going to remove the buckler's AC to it because he's targeting the arm that's holding it. Okay, you get cut in the arm, but you still maintain use of it. You've just taken some damage, so then you hold it tighter to the body. Now you're fighting like this. Now your arm is not as much in danger. Maybe you describe how as you attack with the buckler covering your offhand. That way you don't just run into the same problem, but on the other arm. Something like that. You'd also, of course, use this as a weapon. If you punch with this, you're concentrating all of your punch instead of spreading your punch out across your knuckles and potentially breaking your hand. You concentrate it all onto the disc. So many things, you see in like Dark Souls or Skyrim or whatever, the shield bash like this. Well, if I hit you with this side of my arm, sort of like this, or if I hit you in the face with a punch, which of those is going to hurt more and do more damage? The one that concentrates the same amount of force into a tighter area, right? So instead of, and likewise, if I hit you with the flat of my dagger, like so, is that going to hurt more? Or is that going to hurt more? That one's a little more clear of an example. This is not going to, or this, that'll hurt somewhat, sure, but that's really what's going to do a lot. So maybe that's, if you have a character that doesn't have any of the shield bashing feats, maybe they do this, and then maybe to describe, all right, I'm much better at using my shield as a weapon. I'm bashing like that. I'm throwing hammer fists with it, ridge hands, shovel hooks, uppercuts. And then look, here's something nice Here's a little combination example. We can't really do this in HEMA because there's no real protection that's good enough to get uppercut by a steel disc and not get a concussion, or at least consistently not get a concussion. But, we can do uppercut, and then the shield naturally protects me. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but uppercut, the shield naturally protects me. Deliver cuts from the other side. Just sort of throw both out there. I'm a 2-weapon fighter with my buckler offhand. This has gone way off topic of AC. But yeah, hopefully those are some more ideas of, what AC can be rather than just you hit, you don't hit, you hit, you don't do damage. You can describe why they're missing, why they're don't make your combat more than just roll the hit. Yeah, you hit. You do 12 damage. Okay, moving on. Roll the hit. No, you miss. He's gonna roll the hit. No, he misses you. Remember, we're not sitting here going bink, bunk, like some really old, strategy game. No, we're constantly moving. Etc. Let me know if you'd like to hear more on a given subject. What should I cover next? Combat maneuvers, grappling. I want to have a second person or at least a grappling dummy when I do a grappling video, because it's kind of hard to, Tai Chi is shadow wrestling. There's lots of stuff in the karate forms that are shadow wrestling, but they don't really make sense unless you already understand wrestling, and I'm trying to make these videos for people who don't understand it. But yeah, let me know if you've got a specific thing in fantasy RPG combat that you're like, What does this number actually mean? What is this, or at least what's the real world historical equivalent of this? Yeah, let me know. Thanks for watching.